I'd like to introduce the panel. Daniel Nordh from Daniel Nordh. He's a Square Crypto grantee. He's working on private key management and a seedless non-custodial wallet app called Paymobil. Selene Jin from Blockstream, UX director, and she's building a design culture from scratch there, and faces a very interesting challenge, which is, the software that Blockstream produces is highly scrutinized by engineers. So, how do you make this more accessible as well? And Patricia Estevao, hopefully I got it correct, UX designer. She's one of the Bitcoin OG UX designers. She created these really amazing Bitcoin and Lightning infographics and has done user research in the space, very early in the protocols. And well, hopefully we get Christoph here, but he's also a design grant recipient, and he's working on the getting started guide for designers, and he does a lot of coordination for the Bitcoin design community Slack. All right, so guys, designing Bitcoin for everyone. What does this really mean? Isn't Bitcoin already for everyone? Like, why are we talking about this?
Who do you want to go first?
Daniel?
Okay, I'll jump in. Thanks, nice to be here. So what I think about when we say designing for everyone, I think a lot about designing for the people who are not yet in the space, who doesn't have a wallet yet, who doesn't own any Bitcoin. I think mainly about them. And I'm really excited about, pushing the boundaries for how we can get more people to have a great first experience. And like Selene mentioned, it can be a pretty scary thing to onboard as it stands, but I think we can do a lot better. So I want to design more for people who have never heard of Bitcoin and make sure that they have a great experience.
Yeah, this is a very interesting challenge, and often, when people talk about everyone, they kind of build in their head, build up a persona, a person that's got all the average, or average user behavior, average culture, but we all know that average person doesn't really exist. So, for example, us five on this panel, we all coming from different country and different cultural backgrounds. So there have been a lot of unique challenges when we look into the, what culture and background costs, like user perceive Bitcoin and use it differently. So Giles, you had an interesting story on how people in Caribbean using Bitcoin, right?
Yeah. So back in I think it was 2013, I was trying to get involved in Bitcoin, and I was doing some consulting work for people overseas, and I would usually get paid with PayPal. Typical, for people who work remotely and stuff like that, right? The issue though in St. Lucia, where I'm from, it's a tiny island. There's 180,000 people there, right? It's like there's cities that are bigger, there's towns that are bigger than the entire island. So so when people would pay me, when clients would pay me, PayPal held the money for 21 days, and I couldn't touch it. I couldn't even spend it on websites that accept PayPal. And then after that, it takes, I would only be able to withdraw 500 per day, and they would charge $5 for each withdrawal. So this was getting a bit tiring. Also, my agency, we started as we were growing, we're hiring more people, in different areas. It was always a distributed team. And, I had staff working in, islands close by, islands that I can see. it would take 3 to 5 days for me to send money to them, and about $50. So because the composition of the Caribbean islands is that a lot of them are nation states, right? So even though we're so close together, it's still like a different country. It's a different nation. So it counts as an international transfer. So when I heard about Bitcoin, I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. Like at any point in like any time of the day, even on the weekends, I could make payments to people. I could receive payments, and I don't have to deal with these banks and stuff. This is fantastic. So signed up to Local Bitcoins, found that website, signed up to Local Bitcoins, and there was so putting in your location and stuff, and I started searching for people in my area. I found one person. That was myself. So, up till this day, interestingly enough, I was even trying to get on Mount Gox, and I got rejected from Mount Gox because I couldn't pass KYC. Why? Because it's too tiny of an island for people to care about. And there's lots of other people, facing these problems who are trying to get into Bitcoin, trying to, they know about it, and they still have this issue of, on-ramp trying to join the system.
Yeah, so is that how you started working on the payment section of the Bitcoin design guide?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's quite dear to my heart. Using Bitcoin for payments, whether it's on-chain or Lightning Network, because another example, I have these this user research project that's going on, and we're also facing an issue of like, this research is going on in multiple countries, and we need to, send sometimes very small amounts to people, whether in Rwanda or Trinidad, other Caribbean islands, and some places in Southeast Asia where we're doing this research. How much is it going to cost for me to do a $10 transaction to, like it doesn't make sense to do a wire transfer for $10 like this. And they also face the same issues of not being able to cash out on PayPal. So yeah, it was quite interesting, using Bitcoin for payments in this way. What do you guys think about like like these first-time users of Bitcoin, trying to get onboarded into the system? We are designing this global money system, but still, a lot of the design is very, Western or developed world centric. Like there's a whole bunch of people that I feel are kind of forgotten when we talk about Bitcoin and inclusion and stuff.
Maybe we can start with Daniel.
Or Patricia?
Oh.
Okay.
I was just moving around because there's like a 3D sound, sometimes you're too far, you can't hear people.
Oh, okay. I can't hear Patricia and Daniel.
You might be muted.
Hey, Daniel, can you hear us? Well, Selene, what about you? Whilst we try to sort out these technical glitches, what about you? What do you? Yeah, what do you think about the onboarding experience and how this is mostly like US centric?
Yeah, so for me myself, I I was originally from Shanghai, China, and now live in Canada. So I've been exposed to very different culture and demographic. So as I go on, into the realm of Bitcoin, one thing I discovered is that, for example, to say that onboarding to any Bitcoin wallet, people always start with the backup phrase, right? So in Western country, it is quite common. Of course, we use English words, either 24 words or 12 words. Usually, there's also seedless backup options, but that still people have to, know their own seeds. So, but then it's proposed a very unique challenge in somewhere like in China, because the Chinese language is very different than English. It's not even spelling in terms of character. So now there's a trend that the wallets in China all use Chinese character backup phrase. So I think that's a way to onboard people, because otherwise, when people use Bitcoin wallet for the first time, the headache of all the recovery phrases already create quite big obstacles. And if people accidentally spelling a word wrong because they just not familiar with the language, then it's gonna be a disaster, right? So I think that could be an example.
So how does that work with, for example, like interoperability? Does it mean that like all those seed phrases in those Chinese wallets, are they compatible with something like I don't know, like Blue Wallet or something like this?
Well, I guess they are generated from the same one, right? I mean, it's just generated into different characters. So my assumption is it's compatible as long as the other wallet allow input of Chinese characters. But that's just my guessing. I actually didn't look into detail in that. But I just thinking, in that in terms of that user experience, it's good to onboard more people, because I'm sure there's a large part of world people are not very familiar with English, and like we always don't want to left off those people, right?
Yeah. I think I think the theme here is, we talk about everyone, but we really need to like define who everyone is. Patricia had some really great points about these localized the localized context and use cases of Bitcoin. Really trying to like figure out what these individual cultures or people of different backgrounds, how they use it, why they use it, and what their different security models are, because not everyone, it's not everyone and not every use case of Bitcoin needs, like the maximum security, that like also the kind of the premise of Lightning Network.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yes, thank you, John. And yes, it's really what you're saying that I mean. So when we talk about such an audience for Bitcoin, if you think like worldwide audience, we can't really think of having one interface, one solution that will really fit all their needs, all their purposes, all their situations. I mean, if you think about regular products, like a regular global market, solutions, the best solutions are usually very local. It can be a global corporation or anything, but they are adapted to local markets. And I think that for Bitcoin to really get into so many different audiences, to so many different people, it will have to adapt to their local needs. And here it boils to the question of what is the customer problem that anyone in a particular area has. I mean, what is the main reason that led them to Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin is supposed to be a solution, not, I mean, I really like it as a technology, but the main purpose should be a solution. And for it to be a solution, we need to know what is the problem that it's trying to solve. And I think for that, we really need to think more on a local scale.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Great, awesome. Yeah, I would definitely agree with Patricia, and also not just in terms of geographical needs, also in terms of, you know, the use case. At the moment, we have a lot of fairly generalized Bitcoin wallets, but I think in the future, we're going to have products that cater to specific needs. So like products that are really, really good at storing high value, you know, high security need situations, but also products that actually don't try to solve that use case and can focus on completely other use cases, like maybe low value tipping products, or, you know, they're transactional, sending smaller amounts back and forth, a bit like PayPal, you know, that they could do with a completely different thinking behind, you know, what threats there are and what risks there are for the users, and end up with a very different solution, both to onboarding and the product itself. So I think, yeah, thinking more specific, both about who the people are and what their use case is going to lead to much better products.
So how does this, you know, on the topic of localization, I sometimes feel like if we get too specific and start building like too many like too specific solutions, then maybe we may run into like interoperability issues. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, is that even like a concern, or
I think it can happen, but I mean, again, for me, it all comes down to solving a problem. And when we talk about making it local or making it suited for a specific use case, like Daniel just did, we can come from the same type of foundations. I mean, there is a foundational work that can be done and that can be applied to at least most of Bitcoin's interfaces and products. It's what's built on top of this foundation that needs to be localized and suited for different people. That's the way that I see it, at least.
Okay. So then the next question is like, how do we do this? You know, like, is it like, how can one designer do this? How do we find these fringe use cases? How do we know about them when we're designing our applications?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. But I think one way is just having more people involved building in the space is going to broaden the base of experiences and interests and where people are coming from. You know, I think there's probably, you know, a bit of an overweight currently towards very technical people, people who really kind of buy into a lot of the extras around the tech, be it you know, heavy on the privacy side, or, you know, the sort of counterculture sides of things a bit. But, you know, and that's what we're trying to do in the Bitcoin design community. Just bringing in more designers will just I think naturally lead to more people having slightly different takes on what products they want to build, and hopefully building them. I think there's still so many more things to be built, and just kind of one person taking one step and sharing it in the community, I think, is inspiring. And also, you know, we can learn from each other. Everybody doesn't need to invent everything on their own. There are many more ways we can push, be it private key management or how easy it is to make a transaction, just building on each other's efforts, I think, is going to take us in many more directions than just sort of the mainstream one we've been going in so far.
Yeah, so Daniel, you are one of the persons who initiates the design community. I'm curious to know, like, what's your thought on its direction? Now I think we have over 600 people right now. It's growing quite fast.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, and I must give a lot of credit here to Steve from Square Crypto, who really, had been trying to support the design community of Bitcoin for a very long time before we decided that, well, hey, let's just kick off a community. And yeah, it's 600 people strong at the moment, which is amazing. And in terms of the next steps, or like what we're hoping to achieve, firstly, we're, like we mentioned in the introductions a bit, we're working on what we call the Bitcoin Design Guide, which is just trying to collect, good quality source material for people who are interested in starting in the space. A lot of designers have faced quite a steep learning curve to even get involved at all. So that's what that resource is supposed to do. And then just having a space we have a Slack channel that anybody can join, where I think people just having the opportunity to share work and ask questions and discuss stuff is already leading to really good progress. And there are projects being discussed. And we've also started these design reviews. Connor, one of the members, have kicked that off, and that's fantastic. People often work on their own on a singular product and have nobody to kind of have design crits with. So that's one thing I'm already seeing paying dividends.
Yeah, I think Patricia has a very interesting, come up story in the design space as well. Patricia, like, what's your thoughts on the design community and like, like for designers starting up, like what kind of value do you see it bringing?
I think this is exactly the opportunity to have this foundational work that I talked about, because design patterns, good design patterns are good design patterns for every human. So this is something that we can at least we can generalize, but in a way that we make clear what's good for what applies to which situation in an interface. And from that, like using this kind of work that the community is doing as a resource, then people can really start and build upon it and say, so my product or my specific need is to answer this problem. And this problem needs to prioritize this, and that. And so the Bitcoin Design Guide and everything that's coming out from the design community will be this source of knowledge, I think, I expect at least, that will help a lot of people to build upon it and really deliver the solutions that I mentioned.
Nice. Well, I think that's about us on time. Is there any closing remarks to you guys want to make?
I often receive a question when I being asked the same question when I talk to people outside the design community about, we get this group of designers who are passionate about Bitcoin and working on things. So I'm sure, like, although in this VR stage we can't really see the audience right now, but I'm sure one of some audience would have the same question. That so people often ask, like, people often have the impression that the design community is a group of few designers, like having like a governance, and try to make Bitcoin really easy to use with the sacrifice of security. like how, like maybe you know, like if the audience have any question like that, we can discuss that a bit if we have time. What's your thought on that? Are you?
Yeah, I think you know, like developers have you know, have already had this platform, you know, whether it's GitHub and version control and stuff, they have this platform and process of collaboration already. Design has been something that is typically, you know, done by a very small team in the corner. They usually, you know, go there, do their work, and then make the final reveal. We now are trying to adapt with this, you know, Bitcoin design community, trying to adapt like an open design process. You know, how do you design out in the open, especially when you lack things like user research and even the tools for, you know, merging files and changes and stuff like that. So hopefully we also see like tools starting to evolve to help with this. But yeah, it's definitely, you know, a time where we're trying to figure out, you know, how can we contribute to, you know, open source and Bitcoin in the same way that, you know, developers do.
As in, just to the point that Selene made, I mean, we can't really design and forget about security. I mean, it's not even an option in Bitcoin. So when we talk about and making it, yeah, and when we talk about design and making it easy to use, it's all about balancing and really trying to, because easy to use means that people will make less mistakes, and less mistakes mean that people will avoid losing money. So it has everything to do with security, having a good design. That's how I see it.
Yeah, 100% agree. Like,
all right. Well,
yeah, I guess we
yeah,
are running
well,
out of time.
yeah. Well, let's keep it like that. Well, I guess the main premise of this is, you know, like before we say we're designing for everyone, we really need to, you know, think about, you know, who those individuals are, and to get that, we can't do it alone. We need community, we need feedback, we need to understand users, we need to do it together, and yeah. Thanks for attending, guys, and yeah, thanks to the speakers. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.